It's a little bit crazy. You're suddenly blurry now. I wonder if anything was real. All our history's hazy, like driving in the pouring rain. Are we in too deep to heal? You tell me that you're sorry, we'll make up tomorrow. Tell me everything you know I wanna hear. I'm trying to be open, but that window is closing. And either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here. Before we're leaving here.
I know it ain't easy, but there's something left to hold on to. We can work it through, you don't have to go. There's a future here with me. We'll find the light in a clouded room. Not giving up until you know.
You tell me that you're sorry, we'll make up tomorrow. Tell me everything you know I wanna hear. I'm trying to be open, but that window is closing. And either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here. Either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here.
destitute of light, devoid of color, enveloped in darkness, hence utterly dismal or gloomy, as the future looked black. Soiled with dirt, foul, sullen, hostile, forbidding, as a black day. Foully or outrageously wicked, as black cruelty, indicating disgrace, dishonor, or culpability.
And shalom, everyone. Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the house of the lost sheep of Israel. And today I just really want to let people know we have a lot of work we got to do today. We have reached this pivotal point to which we getting ready to do quite a bit of different things to make sure that each and every one of us will understand what is going on with us as a people and what's going on with us and what our work is, what we need to be doing. So I want to make sure that we clearly understand some things, because we're going to be going through a lot of different things. So I need to be showing you silhouette pictures to where we understand. But once we finish with this teaching today, I'm pretty sure we're going to understand a lot more on what we need to be doing to make sure we walk the right path, to make sure if we're not doing what we need to be doing, then we're going to have a problem within ourselves. So hopefully that each and every one of you guys, we has came up to this. Let me move this down just a hair. I see some people are saying that the volume is kind of low, and hopefully that's straighten it out. I had the mic a little bit further away than I normally do, and hopefully that should be pretty good. So I'm just making sure that I see here it now is showing at a better state. So this should help everybody out from this part. But what we want to do, we want to look at what this is actually talking about is black. I didn't put really a description in the writings here, because I want people really to more so think about what is actually happening here. That's what I want you to see. I want you to see what's actually happening here. And when it's black, we don't know what's there because you can't see anything in black. That was the point I did that. That was the focus on what we was doing. Now, black is a color. It's the color of darkness. Darkness don't have a color, but it's the color of darkness. And darkness is nothing. Darkness is a similitude. And darkness is a similitude of one that is blind. Something that you're unable to see, or you can even make sound judgment of it. Black. Black, you can't even understand, or you can't even get a sense of reason, which is the opposite of clearness, which you can see things clearly. So the same thing we dealing with stones, and you're unable to see stones. You're unable to see through them. You can't see through them clearly. So it's just like black. You can't see through it. So we want to look at this. We want to understand what's going on, because the stones itself is characteristics of something that we have to see. And to make sure everybody is going to go through this same thing, even though this is a lesson, I want you to clearly get that this is actually an understanding, and we got to put in some work. And with this work, we need some paper, we need a pencil, and we need to make sure we're going to write down some stuff, because a lot of stuff today I'm going to share with you to help you to really understand what's going on with Scripture, because black says a lot. It's obscurity. So we need to know what is obscurity to us. I want to invite you over. We want to start something. We want to look at something real close, and then we're going to start tearing stuff down immediately, because we want to know what it is. And we're going to start over here. We're going to start over here with Songs of Solomon. And we're going to look at verse 5. We're going to look here. We're going to go to verse 5. The reason why, Songs of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5, and we're going to see something that he said here. Then we're going to tear some stuff down. For us to understand black, we have to get some keys. We need some stuff in our basket. So once we get to the main focus, we understand everything that's going on, because it's in the basket. Everybody with me? I want everybody, we're going to be all in the basket together. Because if you don't put it in the basket, I promise you, once we start getting down to the end, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. So we need to make sure you write these things down. So I'm asking everybody, please make sure you have a pencil and paper ready to where you're going to take down some notes, and we're going to understand some things. And we're going to see here where Solomon says some things. I wanted to show you what Solomon said. And Solomon said right here, it's clear. He says, I am black but comely. I'm black but comely. O ye daughters of Jerusalem, comparing the tents of Kedar, comparing the curtains of Solomon. Now, Solomon, he speaks in Songs of Solomon, he speaks 100% in parables. The craziest thing is, it's just kind of an off note. You have people who refuse to look at the Apocrypha, but they take in Solomon and they don't even know what's going on in the Songs of Solomon. But then over in the Apocrypha, where the wisdom of Solomon, he speaks more clear, as you see the other books over here. But they chose to put that in there. Just something that we need to know. But we're going to know a couple of things, because we want to understand a few things. So what we want to know is, I'm going to switch this over where we're going to start getting some understanding. And then we're going to come right back, because he's saying, I am black, but comely, ye daughters of Jerusalem. So we need to know what daughters are. And many times, I've shared this many times, but we're going to start distinctly knowing what these things are, because we have to use this as we go through Scripture, and we need to know some of them spiritually, some of them just foundationally is good enough. But let's find out this, and we're gonna look at this all together. And daughters means offspring. That's all daughters mean. And it's not always where you see, if it's in offspring, if you see daughters and it says son, then that daughters is not used as being offspring. I want you to make sure we clearly understand that. If you see daughters with son, it says sons and daughters, that then the offspring is eliminated. But when he's using this as a whole, it's saying daughters, it's saying offspring. And it's saying offspring for a certain reason, which we can get into later. But you see something where he's saying daughters of Jerusalem, which is Israel. You see this here. I have the two here where we'll see, and that's why he's saying that. Now, what we want to pay attention to is this. We want to pay attention to these two. And the reason why it's so important, we pay attention to this, because I want you to see something. Just like I said, I got to make sure you have these keys before we can move forward. And we're going to look at something. We're going to go over here to Second Chronicles, chapter 6, and we're going to look at verse 6. And this is why he actually is saying that. And you'll see this here. Second Chronicles 6, chapter 6, verse 6, it says, "But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my way, that my name might be there, including have chosen David to be over my people Israel." You see how he's saying this? You see how he's putting this? So we're the offsprings of Jerusalem, of his way. But he's saying that for a reason. We got to figure out all this in there. So we know Israel, we are the offspring of Israel. We know that. In fact, when we look at Genesis chapter 28, and we're going to look at verse 20, and we want to make sure everything is solid before we go anywhere. We'll see this piece here. It says, "Including Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if providing God will be with me and keep me in this way," and that's what the way of Jerusalem, which is according to Israel, he says, "including will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on." So he wanted to make sure he kept in this way that he go. And that's why he's saying this here. So once we see that, then we understand the Spirit of God. He wanted the Spirit of God to change his ways. He wanted to go the ways of the Spirit of God. And he's sitting there and he's making this vow to him. That's why when we go over here to Genesis chapter 35, verse 10, it makes it completely clear, because God accepted that, and then God did this. It says, "Including God said unto him, thy name is Jacob." Is Jacob. And he says, "Thy name, thy way." So that's where he's clearing it, because normally that way is of Jacob, but now that way is no more called anymore Jacob, but Israel shall be thy way. Israel gonna be down the way, and he called his name Israel. So we see this all the way across the board, and now we know clearly that Israel is the way. Jerusalem is where we are. Now, what we want to find out is a couple of things. So this is where we see his firstborn, because Jacob became the firstborn of this, and we're going to see that also. So I just want to make sure we all are on the same page before we start doing this. But I want to make sure that you also write this stuff down, because a lot of stuff we're going to go through. A lot of information we got to go through. In Sirach chapter 36, and picking it up at verse 17, you see he says that. And you see he says, "And hear now thy prayer of thy servant." Actually, 1 second. I think that was the wrong one. 1 second. I think that's... And yeah, that's the wrong one. 1 second. That is the wrong verse that I didn't want. Let me put this in there. 1 second. This is the one I believe I want. Yeah, okay, that is the one. I'll make sure it's pulling another verse. It's pulling another verse that I don't want. That's why it's... So let me go up, because that's where it pulled the wrong place. So I want... so we got to scratch 36:17, because it's actually 36:12. So I knew that was wrong. But let's look at this in 36:12 and scratch the 36:17. So we're going to scratch that one. And we want 36:12. And it says, O Creator, have mercy upon the people that is called by thy name, Israel. And it says, including upon Israel, whom thy name, thy firstborn. So we know now the firstborn is Israel. That is the firstborn. So we are clear here. People can tell you whatever they want to tell you contrary to this, but we know clearly now this is talking about Israel. Clearly talking about Israel. And we see over here now when we go back here. So now we know the daughters. It's talking about the offspring of Jerusalem, talking about Israel. And it's saying comparing the tents. And the tents, we have to keep in mind what that is. The tents is talking about the land or the body spiritually, or foundationally talking about the clothes of the skin. Foundationally, talking about the skin, or we can look at the clothes. So we got to look at that, the main thing. We got to look at this the same way. And it's saying as the tents of Kedar. And we know now Kedar is talking about darkness and obscurity. That's what it's talking about, darkness and obscurity. That's why we want to make sure we get all this. It's saying that the curtains. Now, this is actually a little bit more peculiar here because it's saying the curtains of Solomon. And we want to make sure this is talking about a veil. This is talking about a veil being used. Actually, I want to tell you what, better yet, let's go here. I want to show you something. And he uses this because we need all these keys to where we can really get into the subject on what we're talking about. We're going to look at Wisdom of Solomon chapter 17, picking it up at verse 3. This is the only time you really ever see it, what I'm speaking of. Because he's talking about the veil. So it's telling you this because he's telling us about the curtains, telling about this veil. But he only mentions this way one time. And it says, for while they supposed to lie hid in their secret sins. Understand what he's saying here. They were scattered under a dark veil. See, this veil, this is what we're under right now. We're under this dark veil. We're under this stone. That's what we do. That's right now where we in. And it says, for forgetfulness, for horribly astonished and troubled with strange appearance. So this is telling us what's going on. This strange is appearance. This appearance is talking about an appearance. So we know these things. So now we clearly know more so what's going on, but we still need more because we have to pick up a lot more to get what it's actually talking about. We have to get what this is saying. And as we go back to Songs of Solomon, we're going to look at it. So now we understand all what he's saying here. We understand what he's saying here. But let's look at what he's talking about in verse 6. And this is why it's so important to really take the time where we can take the time and really see what he's talking about. It says, look not upon me because I am black. Don't look upon me because I'm black. And we're going to find out more so what that's going on with that. We're going to be seeing that in a little while. So we got to focus on the other things, what he's saying around it, to where we can focus in on black itself. It's saying because the sun had looked upon me. So we got to know what sun is. And the sun is, you remove sun, S-U-N, and just put light. That's all it is. It's just light. So the sun put light upon us. Sun put light upon us. That's all we got to remember. The sun did the light. And this is all we need to make sure we understand. The sun put light there. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what we got to look at. Now, when we look at this, and he's saying looking upon us, and the same thing is we want to make sure we understand everything that's going on. We got to go over to Ecclesiastes because we want to pull another piece. We got to pull these pieces in to where we can all get this together. In Ecclesiastes chapter 11, but we're going to look at verse 7. We want to look at verse 7. And we're going to see what's going on here. In verse 7, it says this. It says, truly the light is sweet. Truly the light is sweet. That's why he's telling us this. Including a pleasant thing, it is for the eyes, is for the understanding to behold the sun. Now we kind of more so seeing what's happening here. We finding out more what's happening here, because now we can understand it, and that's why it's saying the light is sweet. This understanding is sweet. All these things is sweet, and this is the purpose of the sun. The sun is the similitude of everything that we need to see. Of everything that we need to see. And as he's saying over here, I am black because the sun had looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. All that's telling us everything we need to know. Everything we need to know. Because it's telling us my mother's children. All this we have to tear down. Everything we have to tear down to make sure once we get where we're going, and this is why we have to go to Solomon first, to really pull the keys we need. And then we tear that down. Then we can go into what we need to do. So we need the mother's children, because we know, one, God is one way, and then God sent something else. And this is why I say my mother's children. So if it's the mother, we know something else happened. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 12. We'll pick it up at verse 2. So all these keys we putting in our basket to make sure we have them. So once we get to where we need to go, we got it going. It says, remember, God is my salvation. God is. God is. And just like a woman, God put his word inside Christ, the woman. That's why it says God was in Christ, inside the woman. So it's sitting there saying, and I trust and not be afraid. And then it tells you clearly, for the Spirit of God, Jehovah, is my strength and my song. He also is become my salvation. And the Spirit of God, Jehovah, is the mother's. That's what this is saying. But he's talking about, and this made us keeper of a vineyard, but we failed in doing so. So with that, we became strangers to what we was doing. We became strangers to ourselves. We did this to ourselves. And that's why we want to really pay attention to what's going on. We want to make sure that we're writing everything down. In Psalm 69 and verse 8, it's telling you what we did and why we having a problem. And the same thing, what it's telling us over here, my mother's children was angry with me. And it says, I become a stranger in my own brother, and I am an alien unto my mother's children. Exactly the point. We became an alien to the works of Christ. We did this too. So we can't sit there and put this on anybody else but us. Nobody else but us. We're doing things that is not living the ways that we should not be living. In fact, when we look at this as a whole, we'll see this written in Proverbs. As a whole, we'll find out something in Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 1, in verse 8, it says, my son, hear my instructions of thy father. You see what's going on. The instructions coming from him, and he's putting it in Christ as her, and he's sending it to us, and it's saying, hear the words, and she's bringing it to us, and forsake not the law of thy mother. You see how this is really going. And this is why I say it's really important to make sure we write this down, so later we won't get mixed up. So we're seeing what's going on now. So we know the word of God is coming from God. So he's sending his word, which is in the female tense, so it's the mother, and then it's coming to us, and then it feeds us. Are you with me? We want to understand that as a whole. So let's look at this, and we got to make sure we getting all these other keys together. And we're going to pull a little bit more. We're going to get Deuteronomy chapter 14. In Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 21, this is very interesting, and we're going to see this spiritually to where we can really understand what it's talking about. In here, it's saying in verse 21 in Deuteronomy chapter 14, it says, ye shall not eat, ye shall not learn of anything that dieth of itself. Wow, that is interesting. The reason this is so interesting because we die of ourselves. I'm just saying, but it's interesting that it even saying that. So we should not eat of anything that dieth of itself. When we're born, we already scheduled to die. So why are we getting people knowledge? Why are we seeking this type of knowledge? Why are we seeking people, and we want to see what wisdom that they want to have to give us, and thinking that it's going to benefit us, other than the Word of God. This is really what it's saying. All flesh going to die of itself. So the knowledge that he also gives to teach is going to die of itself also. The knowledge that you give to a stranger within the gates, you can sell. Watch, it even says this here. It's clear in here. It says, it says, thou shalt give it unto the stranger. You can give it to a stranger. It says that is within thy gates. He may eat it. He can eat it. If he don't want to hold it, he can eat it. But then it says more so. It says, or thou mayest sell unto the alien. That's to the Gentiles. You can sell it to the Gentiles. This is really interesting. That's why I say it's a highly interesting piece of documentation here. But it tells us more. It says, thou art an holy people unto the Spirit of thy God. Thou shalt seest a kid in his, thou shalt not seest a kid in his mother's milk. But I do want to change something, because I want you to actually, because I know some people might get this one confused. Just thinking about it, I see this here, because I want you to see this, and we're gonna make sure we clearly get everything. Now, this one here, seeth, that particular word right there, that's talking about boil. It's talking about boil. You shall not boil a kid in his mother's milk. That's what it's saying. Now, you see seeth another way without an E. You see it another way without an E. Actually, I'm going to show it to you. Because I want to make sure we're clear on this one. And then I go somewhere else and make sure. We'll go to Genesis and go to chapter 16. I believe 16:13 do have it. 16:13. And we do have it. You see here, it says, and she called his name, she called the name of the Spirit of God that spake unto her, thou God seest me. And she said, have I also here looked after him that seeth me. So seeth with the TH, and is different from THE. Those two are different, but most people blend those two together, and you can't do that. Those are two different things. So the main thing is you want to mainly always make sure those two are separated. But this is not the focus. This one is the focus, so that's the one I'm focusing on. And this one here is talking about to boil. And now when it's telling you another part here, it's talking about a kid. And the kid is talking about a goat. And the goat has to learn. Because they wild. They kind of unruly. So, and then you act as a goat in his mother's milk is the Spirit of God talking about. So the milk, that is the word that is coming from God. So the mother's milk that's coming to us is coming from God, and then we latch on to the breast of the word to where we can be satisfied and we can understand the words of God. In fact, we can look at this actually in here. We can see everything that we're talking about here. And we can see as we continue to go forward, we're just going to get more clarity as we continue. In Isaiah chapter 66, picking it up at verse 11, and it says this. It says this there. And we look, it says that ye may suck. Okay, this is why you don't want to boil a kid in his mother's milk. That's why you don't want to do that. It says that ye may suck and be satisfied with the breast of her consolations, of her oracles from God. This is what this is talking about. And it's talking about, and it says that ye may milk out and be delighted with the abundance of her glory. That's the purpose. In fact, as you go here and we look at Sirach is really tying a lot of this in for us, where we'll see what this bridge is here in Sirach chapter 36, and picking up that, then we'll put them all together. Chapter 36, and we're going to look at verse 14. In verse 14, it says this. As it's saying over there, it says, fill Zion, so it's talking about fill Jerusalem, fill Israel with thy unspeakable oracles, those consolations, in thy people with thy glory, with the abundance of her glory also. So we see this is all there. All this is there. But I just like to make sure, this is why we have to really pay attention. What is black? Because we don't want to see it. We don't want to sit there and boil something based on something she's given. And this is what so many of us do right now. A lot of us do this. A lot of us will sit there and we'll hold on to doctrines or something else. And we will see the kid in his mother's milk. You'll boil it. So that tells us a couple of things. And we're supposed to be getting the oracles of God. But when people come and tell you different things and teaching you different ways and manners and telling you to learn this and to learn that this way and to learn this way and hold on to this that way and hold on to this way, you're learning something that is not of God. Because those consolations, as we've seen over there, are the oracles of God. That's all this was saying the entire time. It's saying that ye may suck and be satisfied with the breast of her consolations, these unspeakable oracles. But even when you see what Solomon said, he said that they made me keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. This was our problem. This is our problem. So what happened here? What went on with this issue? We became a cursed people based on not following what all you see right here. We became a cursed people. We became black. We became obscurity. You can't see through us. We can't see us in our clearness because we're black. But we're going to start finding out more so how do that work. Because this is the important part of what we're getting into. So make sure that you have taken the time and wrote these things down. Because it's really going to get more and more serious as we continue to go through with this presentation. And I want to show you now more so how we are cursed people. We're going to look at this in Sirach. It's, again, another piece of text that's really interesting. Sirach chapter 3, but we got to go down to verse 16. We're going to see this here. In 16, it tells us this. Make sure that we're clear here. It says, he that forsaketh his father. So we forsaketh the father because he sent the word to us. And we chose not to suck from the breast of our mother. We still forsake him because his word was in Christ. That's what we did. And it says, as a blasphemer. And we are being seen as a blasphemer because we're lying. We sit there and say one thing, but we do something contrary. There's a full thought there. And then it says, including he that angereth his mother is cursed. Now we see it's serious. So if you refuse the breast of your mother, do you refuse the breast of God, to which he has sent his word to you, and you refused it, you curse. Now we starting to probably getting more so what's going on. And a lot of us don't know what curse actually means. But we shouldn't have to worry about what curse means, because I'm going to show it to you to make sure we clearly get what curse is. What curse means. See, in curse, and you see here with the ED at the end, you see that ED at the end. This is something that has already happened. We already cursed. This already happened. It's not something that's going to happen later. It's going to happen. No, this has already happened. We're cursed. As a people of God, because we have sinned and we need to get right with God. We need to get right with God. And stop trying to adhere to some crazy messages of men. So that's what makes us look like a rock. That's why he's saying you got these 12 stones. That's why he says these things. These 12 stones. In fact, let's look at this, and we can come back to this one. We'll come back to this. But I want to show you, to make sure we clearly getting this. We're going to go to Habakkuk. And I want to go to Habakkuk, and I want to show you this piece that Habakkuk said. Habakkuk chapter 2, and we'll pick this up at verse 11. And you'll see this prophet, he says something that should have pricked each and every one. It says, for the stones shall cry out of the wall, including the beam out of the timber shall answer it. If we're not understanding that, Yahweh actually spoke on this. So let's look at this all together, because scriptures cannot be broken at all. It's impossible for them to be broken. When you look at Luke chapter 19, and then we can put everything together. Luke chapter 19, verse 40. We're going to pay attention with this piece of text and blend it over there to make sure everything goes together within itself. In chapter 19, verse 40, says this. Yahweh is saying the same thing. It says, and he answered and said unto them, I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. The stones would immediately cry out. If a true messenger of Christ, hold his peace, the stones will cry out, not knowing the things required to have the true peace of God. All these things is hidden from our understanding. So we are the examples of stone. 12 stones, and we got to get into this. So our heart became an adamant stone, and that's what we got to focus on. We became an adamant stone. Focus on that and write this one down, because then I'm gonna show you back over on the board again, because I want to make sure we all get this understanding. So the 12 stones in the heart is of an adamant stone. This is why we want to pay attention to what's going on here. Let's go a little bit closer here. Let's go a little bit closer here, because we know these stones are going to cry out. And they cried out in Egypt. If everybody remember that, they cried out in Egypt. Remember that. So don't forget that. They cried out. And when they cry out, because it was no one speaking the word, but they cried out. Let's look at this in Zechariah chapter 7. Verse 12, and he says this. He says, Yea, they have made their hearts comparing an adamant stone. An adamant stone. We got to find out what that is also. And it's saying, least they should hear the law. So this is a problem that we even had in Egypt. We'll cry out and really don't know why. But our hearts is darkened. We can't see through it. It's like a rock. Least we should hear the law and the words of the Spirit of God of hosts has sent in his spirit by former prophets, by these men of God is just speaking the words of God. For that reason came a great wrath from the Spirit of God of hosts. And because this ignorance that we have in our hearts was darkened, we getting wrath, and then we act like we don't know why it's happening. Because Adamant, what we want to actually know, and I'm going to show you this and what Adamant is. Why we want to understand Adamant. And I'm going to take this to you, and we want to understand that. So we want to take this one. We want to take this one here. And I want to put this here. We want to see what Adamant is. Because we want to know what everything is as we move forward. So Adamant. It's going to shock you when you find out what it actually is. That's what it is. So now we know what adamant is. Adamant is a thorn or a briar, which is like a bush. That's all it is. But now we see what it's talking about. Now we clearly get what it's saying when we look at this. But the problem is we didn't change our ways. We didn't change our ways. So when he's telling us right here, when we look at this here, and it says, our hearts is as in thorn. Our hearts is as in briar, as this bush, this weed. That's what he's saying this. And it's as a stone, something we can't see through. You seeing how this working now. So it's and then he sent these prophets to us, and we chose not to even pay attention to them because our hearts is darkened. We have to look at these stones and we can't see through them. So if you can't see through a stone, I really want you to pay attention to this. And as I'm saying this, hopefully somebody really pay attention to what I'm saying. If you get a stone, and we're going to look at some of them, but if you get a stone and you say you get a raw diamond stone that turns into a diamond through the pressures and the things that's when it's in the earth, a raw diamond is really not worth anything. There's rubies and other things. It's really not worth anything. If you can't see through it, it become almost priceless when you can see through it. The price change. If it's a rock, it's one price, but if you can see through it, it's a whole nother price. And this is how we became. That's what he's saying. This is what he's talking about. But with the pressures, so we have to go through the pressures and everything that he is doing to us. So we're in the earth, like the stones. So we're in the earth. And we're going to go under intense pressure as the stones. We're the similitude of that. So as you see stones that go down into the earth, and when they dig them up, and once they went through these intense pressures and over time, it just doing all this stuff, you see a dark stone becomes clear. We'll see through this. So through the heat and the pressure, it becomes clear as color, and it becomes clear as water many times. And this is telling us what our hearts is, which is representing our way towards God, which is represent 100% towards God. So these 12 stones is representing us, is what we're going to look at. These 12 stones. And we're going to see some of this in Ezekiel. In Ezekiel, we're going to find out some interesting things, and we're going to get down to the bottom of, start getting to the bottom of this. So in Ezekiel chapter 11, but we're going to look at verse 19. And we want to pay attention close to this other key that we need, because these keys is detriment to what we need to know. It says this. It says, I will give them one heart. I want you to pay attention to what he's telling. He's going to give it one. He says, I will put a new spirit within you, including I will take the stony heart. It's a stony heart out of their flesh, and I will give them a heart of flesh. Almost like you want to say like that's, I'm talking about like poetry in motion. Because these hearts have committed iniquity and sin and created within our minds. But we have to be willing to obey the word of God and follow his ways. And then we got to go through this fire and this pressure and all these things to where he can tear down what's going on with us. So it has to go through this intense pressure upon this earth. Let me bring you a little bit closer to what I want you to see. What I want you to see and what he's saying here. In Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 19. 26 and verse 19. Moses penned this, and he said, from what the Spirit of God said, he said, I will break the pride. I will break the pride of your power. I will make your heaven as iron and your earth as brass. Sometimes you see him switch it around another way, but he's telling you what's going to happen, because our hearts are darkened. But if the prophets is not there to tell you anything, then you're going to cry out thinking that it was something different. Then you think it was something different. But he's telling us right here. He's going to make our heaven as iron and our earth going to be brass. And we're going to go through this like furnace. This is going to happen. And it's happening right now. Because he got to take this dross and all this stuff out of us. We have to get these things out of us. So we're going to go through these trials. We're going to go through these things in the earth. And some of them is worse than others. We'll see this here. Why you see even Peter spoke on this based on what he went through. And you'll see this here in 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 12. 1 Peter chapter 4, and we'll pick it up at verse 12. And Peter said this exact thing. And we'll see this right here. In 1 Peter, in chapter 4, one second, do ya? Let me see. We have chapter 1. I want chapter 4, verse 12. There we go. Here we go. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. And it says, Beloved, think not it strange concerning fiery trials. Because our heaven is going to be iron and our earth going to be like brass. We're going to go through this furnace. So we got to go through this. And in a furnace is fire. In a furnace is fire. And so don't think it's strange when concerning a fiery trial that may try you, as some strange thing happened unto you. So don't think that this is going to be weird. Because God, he want to put this new spirit in you, but we have stony ways. We have this prideful heart. And that's where our problem is. So with this prideful heart, we're going to go through these issues. So as we're going through the issues, and we're prideful. So the word of God has to take us to the door, and we at the door of the furnace. And at this door of the furnace, he has to remove this stony heart. So we got to go through this furnace, and we have to endure some serious pressures, some serious fires, some serious, I'm talking about just going through all kinds of hell that we'll see in our life. But these are pressures to get all the dross and all the impurities out. This pridefulness has to come out. You'll see me even speaking on this, and we'll see where Yahushua even spoke on this in Mark. We can find this out in Mark chapter 4, and we'll look at verse 16. And you'll see where he's talking about this in verse 16. We're going to pull this up and look at this and make sure that you have these keys, because we need all these things later. And it says, including these are they likewise which are sown on stony ground, which is the word. And it says, who when they have heard the word, exactly what it's saying, immediately they receive it with gladness. So a lot of us is still going to receive the word of God with gladness. We're going to receive it with gladness. But a lot of us, even though we receive it with gladness, do it mean that we're going to hold on to it? Because our hearts is darkened. So some of us are going to receive it with gladness, but but it's still different. But a stone is not dirt, so it's not sunk in. And as it says here, including having no root in themselves, and so endure but for a time. Yeah, because they don't have no root. It's not inside you. Your heart is of stone. It's adamant. So it don't have no root. So since it don't have no root, you're telling right there, no root in themselves, and so endure but for a time. Afterwards, when affliction, remember Peter already told us. So when affliction or persecution arises for the word's sake, by the words that was given to you to go through the pressure, to go through and be able to endure it, to go through all these things. Now you have to endure some affliction, some persecution when that arises for the word. Because he already said these things is going to try you. They want to see, is this still going to be in you? And what happened, it says, immediately they are offended. They're going to become offended because either it's going to offend where you want to stay connected with some certain people because of the word, or you're going to have that you want to stay a certain way of life or a way of life styles that you already into that you don't want to change. So immediately you become offended. You took it first with gladness, but then once you seen you have to go this way or that way, now you're offended. Now you become offended on this for the word's sake. Meaning it was never the word went around your heart, but it didn't go in your heart. It went around it, but it didn't have no roots in it. So it was just around it. So when it's like that, it can easily be taken off because it couldn't penetrate the heart. It couldn't penetrate it. Let's look at verse 18 and see what this says. And as it said, it says, and these are they which are sown among thorns, which is sown amongst adamant stones. That's what it's telling you. Such as hear the word. There's nothing we can say here. Nothing we can say here. In verse 19, he makes more so what this adamant stone is. It says the cares of this world. It's like I was saying earlier. It's things here that we get tied to. And as we get tied to them, we don't, I don't want to change this. I don't want to change that. It was good. It was cool while I was hearing it, but now this is being presented to me, and I really don't want to lose that. Because I care for the world. I don't want to lose that. So the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of the riches, including the lust of other things entering in. So these other things trying to come in, no, I don't want those things. I cannot have those things. What do? It choked the word. It chokes it. and they become unfruitful. Because of the cares of the world. And you have some people where the cares of the world is so serious. So serious. It's really crazy. I'm talking about, actually, we're going to tell you this. Let's look at part of it. Because some of this is so serious. It become really hard for people to really make ends meet. In 1 John, we'll look at this 1 John chapter 2, picking up at verse 15. We want to see something in verse 15. And to show you what it's even saying, what John understood. It says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. But people will live paycheck to paycheck to live according to the world. You follow what's going on? You understand what's happening here. Because if we care for the world, if we're caring for the world, and we're going to care for the things which are in the world, which is riches and lust and other things. It's telling us that over there. Yahweh Shai telling us this right up front. Right up front, he's telling us this. But he's saying, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. And it says, if any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So then it's clear. You see, many people will sit there and tell you how much that they love God, but then they love the world. And they love the things that are in the world. So they're telling you who they are. But you want them so, well, I want to stay connected. So I'm going to stay tied to them. And they're telling you. They're telling you about the things of the world. They're tired about things that they see. They're tired about things you have. Oh yeah, he has this type of car. He has this kind of watch. He has this house. He has this money. He has this. And they want the same, and they trying to build up this same crazy thing. And besides seeking God, they seek the things of the world. The cares of it. The deceitfulness and the riches and the lust of things to enter in and chokes the word. In fact, you'll see this here in verse 16. He says more here. And this is why we have an adamant stone in us. And it says, for all that is in the world, in the lust of the flesh. You see, in the lust of the flesh, because the flesh lusts for the things of the world. The flesh do not lust for the things in the spirit. The flesh lusts for things of the world. And it says the lust of the eyes, because that's what it sees. The flesh, it sees these things. It says, including the pride of life. We just had a problem with that, because he has to break the pride of it. We just seen that in Leviticus. He has to break the pride of that. It is not the Father, but is of the world. These things is of the world. These things we chase, quickly go back and we look for these things and we want those things to happen. Things of the world. But then we'll quickly change it and say we looking and we want God. But our hearts was darkened because we lusting really for the world. It's an oxymoron. See, in the children of Israel, hearts is the similitude of the stones that's darkened and hardened as an adamant stone. That's why he's using those stones. And these stones are not clear, but they just rocks. They just rocks. So we have to understand this, and hopefully that we got some. And we're going to see this, and we're going to start seeing some silhouette pictures, which are going to help us. And hopefully that everybody did these things and wrote down the notes, because we have to look at what's going on here. And I don't want you lost, but if you took some pretty good notes, you can go back and you can look at them. You'll get what's going on. In Exodus chapter 24, and we're going to look at verse 9. And we're going to see something that's really, really peculiar. Really, really peculiar, which we're going to start getting into what's happening here. And you see this here. It says, then went up Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. I want you to pay attention. What's getting ready to go down here. What's going to go down here? It says, and they saw the God of Israel. So when people are sitting there, they saw the God of Israel. They saw him. And it says, including there under his feet, all this, and you make sure you keep this one. Exodus chapter 24 and verse 10. The reason why, because this all going to have a lot to do with what's getting ready to happen as we go through this lesson. And it said, under his feet was a paved work of sapphire stone. But this sapphire stone was there. And it says, including as the body of heaven in his clearness. Wow. Okay, so we want to understand these sapphire stones and just touch on that for a second, and then we're going to go more into what we're doing. I want to show you something in Job in chapter 28. Something in Job. Chapter 28, we're going to look at verse 6. And this actually, everything going to come in full circle in a second, but it says, the stones of their place of sapphires have dust of gold. I want you to pay attention to that, because these are images of dust of gold, but these are stone, this is pavement. Pavement. You hopefully you following this, because it's gonna go somewhere. It's getting ready to go somewhere. It's gonna go somewhere real quick. And we're gonna find out what these stones are about, because these stones is talking about things that's on his breastplate and what's going on. So we want to understand how and what's going on with this sapphire stone. See, and then you also have where you see where it talks about an emerald stone, and you see things where Paul sit there and say they never spoke about it, and how the scepter and stuff would happen, but these paved works, because we have to remember, under the scepter was in Judah's hands, that he had to do something and follow, but he wasn't a sapphire. I want you to pay attention to that. In fact, I want to show you this, and we're going to move through. And this here is going to start getting real fast, real quick. But I want to show you this in Genesis. I want to show you something there. In Genesis chapter 49. 49, we're going to look at 8. The reason why I want to show you something, then we're going to go somewhere. And it says, Judah, thou art whom thy brother shall praise, and and thou shalt be upon the neck of thy enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whip, a young lion, the prey of thy son. Thou art gone and stoop down and crouch as a lion, as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver. And we just want to put those two. The reason why, because they're going to pay a lot of attention, it says, until Shiloh come, to whose right it is, because that's what that is. We're going to find out all this even later, which you're going to get deep into it. But you got to remember, he had to walk upon something. He had to walk upon this sapphire stone. Now, the sapphire stone, to let you know ahead of time, is talking about Dan. It's talking about Dan. We're going to find out things even with that. But the same thing that you see here is what you see, why you see this here, where he had to be, and we had to follow in that footstep. You see, Peter talks about that. Peter talks about that in 1 Peter we need chapter 2. We need chapter 2, verse 21. And you see here, and Peter penned this, and he says, for hereunto ye are called, because Christ also suffered for us, because of the word. It says, leaving us an example that ye should follow in his steps. In his steps, he was walking on the pavement of Dan. Dan was removed. So we got to figure out what's going on here about these stones, because these stones is highly important. And I want to show you a couple of things, and then we're going to go over to the board, and then we're going to get into these stones. So let's do some things. We're going to find out some things that's really peculiar, and we're going to find out, actually, we're going to look at this here. I want to show you something, and you're going to see something that's really, really crazy, that most people are going to say crazy, but it's really not crazy. You see here where you see Reuben. You see Reuben here. One second. Excuse me. You see Reuben here, that firstborn, and then you see Simeon and Levi, and then you see, as it keeps going down, you see Judah and everybody, and it keeps going down. But what we want to find out is something that, as he was talking to him in Genesis chapter 49, in Genesis 49, we want to understand some things. Again, we need our paper to where we're going to write these things down, because that's not the order that they was born, all in Genesis chapter 49. For whatever reason he talked to him in the order that he did is what he did. We're not to try to find out why he talked to him in that order. But I'm going to give you the order of the ages, and then we can go to the stones. Because Reuben, actually, we'll look at this. We'll go through each one. We'll do it this way. So we're going to find out right here. We're going to find out Reuben is his firstborn. Reuben is his firstborn. And we'll see this here. And I'm going to show you here to where we can look at them. We're going to go to Genesis. We're going to go to chapter 29. And this you write down for your future reference. Chapter 29, but we're going to look at verse 32. And we're going to see Reuben is his firstborn. Because people have lied about these orders also. And it says, and Leah conceived and bare a son, and she said, call his name Reuben. And she said, surely the Spirit of God had looked upon my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. So we know Reuben is the firstborn. This is clear. And when we get down to verse 33, you see, and she conceived again. And it says, and she bare a son. It said, because the Lord have heard that I was hated, he have therefore given me this son also, and she called his name Simeon. So we know Simeon now in 33 is the second son. Now the third son we'll see in 34. And some people sit there and say that they was having sex. They didn't start, well, they was having sex all the time and here having children first. No, she didn't start having children until actually Rachel was given to him. Then she started having children. So, but people lie on that. But in verse 34 it says, she conceived again and bare a son, and now this time my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore called his name Levi. So we know that one is the other one. Now when we go down to verse 35, this is where the 4th son. And then we're going to see where everything's going. And then it says she conceived again and bore a son, and praised the Spirit of God. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. So we see what's going on here. We see what's going on there. But now what we want to do is still get the order of these kids. And we'll find that as we go down. We're going to look at chapter 30, and we're going to look at verse 6. And we're going to see the 5th son. And we're going to look at verse 6. And we see it here. And this is here. And you see, Rachel said, God have judged me, and have also heard my voice, and have given me a son, therefore called his name Dan. But Dan was by Bela. That was one of her handmaids, so I'll show you that in one second. Now you're going to see this again. We're going to go down. Now that was the 5th son. Now we're going to see the 6th son. The 6th son is Naphtali. We're going to find that in verse 8. You see in 30, in verse 8. You'll see this here. It says, Rachel said, with great wrestling I have wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And I called his name Naphtali. You see who she's saying she wrestled with. She's saying she wrestled with her sister. You see what's going on here. So you see Rachel had 2 children, but it was by her handmaid Bela. That's who bore those children. So we know Dan now and Naphtali is by Bela, but they are the handmaid of Bela. But we're gonna go down a little bit more. Let's go down to verse 11. We're gonna look at verse 11, and it says you see in verse 10, it says, and Zephyr her handmaid bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, the truth cometh, and called his name Gad. So now we know Gad is the 7th son. This is the order that these children is coming. And when we drop down to verse 13, you'll see this again. And you see in Zephyr, Leah's maid bare Jacob a 2nd son. So we see this again. So you see in verse 13, now we see, and Leah said, happy am I. The daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. Now you see this. Now we know Gad and Asher is the son of Zephyr. Those are Leah's handmaid. That's the 8th son. Now we got to look at the 9th son. We got to go down to verse 18. And so we're looking at Genesis 30 and 18. And this is the order of these children. But people mix these children up based on Genesis 49. They mix that up. So now we're going to look at the verse 30 and 18. And this is the 9th son. And you'll see right there, and it says, and God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare a 5th son. But it says in verse 18, Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband, and she called his name Issachar. So now we know where Issachar came from. But we're going to look at the next one. We got to go down to verse 20. And besides looking at verse 20, we'll just go on and pick up verse 19 also, because you're going to see it bear the son. It says, Leah conceived again and bare Jacob a 6th son. Leah said, God have endured me with good dowry, and now my husband will dwell with me, because I have bored him, you see right there, 6 sons, and called his name Zebulun. So these are born, Issachar and Zebulun was by Leah, not by handmaids. So you see this, and it's telling you right here. But you have people who get a lot of this stuff mixed up based on the orders on Genesis 49. They get these mixed up, and they think this is the order of these children. It's not. Let's go down, and we're going to look at the 11th child, and we'll see this in verse 24. Now, this is where everything started changing, but we're going to see in verse 23. Well, we'll start at verse 22. It says, and God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened unto her, and opened her womb. And she said, and she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. Now, this is her first child from actually Jacob. All the other children, they came through her handmaids. This is an actual child from Rachel herself. And she called his name Joseph, and said, the Spirit of God had added to me another son. Even though she's saying that's another son, but she's saying this is another son, but this is the actual son that came actually from Rachel herself. And we'll see the next one where we'll go down. Now it went a while, so it went a while for a little while, because for the 12th son. So we got to go down to 35. And we're going to go to verse 18. We're going to look at verse 18. And we're going to see the other child. And we'll see it here. And we can see right here where we'll pick it up at verse 16, but we're going to go down to verse 18. It says, and they journeyed from Bethel, and they went a little way to come to Ephraim, and Rachel travailed because she had hard labor because she was pregnant again. And then it said, and it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said unto her, fear not, thou shalt have this son also. In verse 18, and it came to pass as her soul was departing, because she was dying having this child, she died. She called his name Benoni, but that wasn't cool. And I teach people what that actually means later. His father called him Benjamin, not Benoni. For certain reasons, he wasn't going to let that child be named that. And we see that there. Because the main thing is here, we will see later what will need to happen. We would need to see what happens. Because now I want to show you this piece of text where we're going to start getting a closer understanding of what's happening here. In Hebrews chapter 10, and picking it up at verse 9, even though we was having these things, which is going to play a serious role as we're going in here. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 9, this you have to make sure you keep in your pocket. You got to keep it in your pocket because this is going to play a serious, serious, serious role. And it says, then said he, lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first that he may establish the second. Because this is serious on what's happening. So we have to take away this one stony heart to where we can establish this other heart. This is what's actually going on. But a lot of us are not seeing this, but we're going to actually see it in 1 second. Let's look at this all together, and we're going to find out what's happening here. In Exodus chapter 28, Exodus 28, we're going to look at verse 16. This is where the party starts, and this is where everything we should be able to click together. We have enough keys now to where once I start speaking, we shouldn't have no issues on what I'm talking about. And we're going to start here at verse 16. It says, foursquare, it shall be doubled, a span shall be the length thereof, including a span shall be the breadth thereof. Now, it just told us a lot of information. It gave us a lot of information there. So the life is foursquare, which it means, so it's equal in length and it's equal in breadth. Basically what it's saying. It's equal. Now, the part is, it's being doubled. I'm telling you, and it's being doubled. But we don't know what that means, but I'm going to show you what all this is actually getting into. Because now we have a choice to get the double portion. Because when you're looking at that, the span is talking about the time of life and its duration. That's what this is getting into. The time of life and its duration. That's what the span is. The distance that is talking about the length. So the length is the distance of time with the spirit of one being born. So we have to understand the stones in its darkness, and it comes to the light. So some of us, in the length and the distance of time that it takes for you to mature, to come to the knowledge of God, some of us, before your time and distance is ended, some are going to be 30% clear, some are going to be 60% clear, some are going to be 100% clear. It's based on this foursquare. It's based on the time is doubled, and it's based on the span and the length thereof on what you're going to have. And the problem here, the reason why we have this issue, why this issue is there, because a lot of us became dross, and we're going to find this out also. And dross is, I've been saying it quite a bit, but we want to find out what that is. So we got to look at it. And we're going to find that in Isaiah. We're going to look in Isaiah, we're going to look at chapter 1, but we're going to pick it up at verse 22. In verse 22, Thy silver is become dross. Thy silver is become dross. Thy wine mixed with water. Wow. So wine is talking about a faith, but mixed with water is talking about a knowledge. So our faith is mixed with some knowledge, but why is it even saying in that? Because you see in the next verse, it said that princes are rebellious. So we know the knowledge in the water that we got is no good. So that's telling us that right up front. We became more so with the knowledge, we became murderers and thieves and rebellious people teaching doctrines that we shouldn't be teaching. Teaching people to have faith in flesh and not in the word of God. We're dross. It is not a God. And God made the image of the appearance of a figure of a man to adopt his doctrines. And we have taken those and mixed them with wine and with water. So we have a problem here. We have a big problem here. It is what it is. So let's look at this all together. We're going to find out some things. It says, thou shalt set a setting of stones. We can't get around this now. We're going to set a setting of stones. And the first row shall be a Sardis. The first one going to be a Sardis. And this Sardis is actually representing now, we know the order of the children. Don't look at the order of the children in Genesis 20 and 49. We want to know the order of the children that was given in the way they was born. So the first one was a Sardis. And we want to understand the Sardis. We want to understand Sardis as a whole. In fact, let's do this. Because we have the things here. So that's a Sardis. That is a Sardis stone. That's what a Sardis stone looks like. And once you understand this Sardis stone, we understand what this Sardis stone is all about. We understand what this Sardis stone is all about. And this is what happened with Reuben. It's a redness to it. You see how that is? It's a redness to it. But the same thing is what I want you to pay attention to is this. I want you to see something. I want you to see something. We're going to come back to the stone, but I want you to see something first. And we're going to look at this in Genesis chapter 49. We're going to see this in Genesis 49. Then we're going to go back to the stone. But I want to show you why he's saying this. Because he's actually going to tell you what, I want that to stay there. I'm sorry. I want that to stay there. I want Isaiah 1:22 to stay there. Because we became mixed is what it's talking about. And this is what we did. So I want that to stay there. And we got to keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 49. Now we'll come here. And we're going to look at that a little bit closer now. Genesis 49, chapter 49, we're going to look at verse 3. And as he says this here, and he makes this clear. He says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my mighty, including the beginning of my strength, my excellency of dignity, and excellency of power. You see how he's telling him all these comparisons and what's going on. All these things, what's going on. And he says something that really going to show you what's going on. Because now you're going to see why we became mixed with this. It says, unstable as water. We mixed it. We mixed it. It says, thou shalt not excel, because I went up to thy father's bed and defiled thou it, and went up to my couch. This is what he did. And what he's talking about is what he did. He slept with Bala. Actually, I'll show it to you. I'll show you that, actually. Might as well show it to you. So we're going to go to Genesis 35, and we right here anyway. Well, I was going to do it anyway. We're going to go to 35. We're going to look at verse 22. And we want these two. Actually, I don't want, I just take that one. We want just 22. We'll just take this one. It says, and it came to pass when Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben, understand what happened? Reuben, that's his firstborn, went and laid with Bela. You see this here. He went and laid with his brother's mom, the mother of Dan and Naphtali, that you seen back in Genesis early in 30. That's what he did. And you see this going on here. And you'll see, even when you look at 25 here, it tells you, it says, in the sons of Bela, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. That's what Reuben slept with. He slept with their mother, his brother's mother. So he's telling him this, and he says, and he laid with Bela, his father's concubine. Told you, like, he's not married, it's a concubine. And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. So he's telling them he was unstable as water. He was unstable as water. And people err in doing those things. So unstable is talking about lightness. So now we back to the unstable. It's talking about the lightness. To act in lightness. And actually, I'm going to tell you what, let's go here to make sure we clearly get that. So the same thing that we'll see here, we'll pour this and just to make sure we kind of get that also. So we want to sit there. So when you're looking at lightness, it's talking about more so than beneath the eye. Oh, that's what you is. That's what's going on. And actually, that's being part of Adamant stone. It's being part of Adamant stone. In fact, we can get more understanding there. Because I'll show you one more thing there. We go to over here. We're going to look at Jeremiah. I'm going to show you an example of that. The best thing for us to do is show you an example of what's going on. Example of that is Jeremiah chapter 23. 23, and we're going to pick it up at verse 32. In verse 32, we will pull it. We will pull this. It's telling you about the likeness. And it says, remember, I am against them that prophesy false dreams. Prophesy false dreams, saith the Spirit of God, and tell them and cause my people to err by their lies and by their lightness. They double-minded. They wavering. It's telling you right up front. This is what people do. And it says, sent them nor commanded them. Therefore they shall not profit this people at all, saith the Spirit of God. He's telling you this right up front. But people, no matter what, even though we show this a lot of times and we show people what the word is, still no matter what, people still going to do what they do. So that's why I say, people make their choice on where they really want their resting place. And then once they get it, then they're just going to be shocked on where they're going. But we got to remember, those places are eternities. And it says, for we are not as many which corrupt the word of God, but as the sincerity, but the word of God in the sight of God speak we in Christ. We're not speaking in a likeness. We don't want to be contrary to what's going on. So the same thing is when we go back. and we look at this, when we look at that, this is why it's so important, because this same stone, that same stone should be this, should look just like that. That same stone should look like that, because that's a Sardis stone. Shocking, isn't it? That same Sardis stone that we just seen right here is actually these stones in its clearness. So you see, it's not crazy. It's not a crazy thing, but we want to understand what it's talking about. These stones should be in their clearness. But the first thing we always look for, we come into a truth and we automatically say we're this. We'll come into truth and we automatically say we're this. Automatically. That's what's going on. And we really this. Unshaped, everything. This is us in its fullness. But we'll come into it and say, I done found out what the truth is. Now I'm this. No, that's not the truth. You're not that. Now we see the issue. But let's look at this a little bit more. Let's go over it a little bit more. Let's look at this a little bit more. Because as we finding out and we looking at that, and we see more so, we see that first one was the Sardis stone, but then you have the Topaz stone. That's the second stone. And the Topaz stone has the same meaning, has another meaning. See, the Topaz stone is telling you about the image of affliction, to flee away, causing pain. That's what the Topaz stone is. But before I get into the Topaz stone, to really go down and break that down and what's going on, I want to also bring in the other one, which we'll see in a minute. Because the Topaz stone actually represents Simeon. The Topaz stone represents Simeon. The image of affliction, causing pain and suffering and calamity and stuff like that. But Simeon actually means to hear. Excuse me. Simeon actually means to hear. And as he heard his sister Dinah, actually I want to show you that. We're going to look at this in Genesis chapter 34. I want to show you what happened. Because he did something, I want to show you something more, so what's going on. In 34, we're going to look at verse 25. We're going to look at verse 25 and pay more close attention on what happened. So is it, and it came to pass on the third day when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi. And that's why I said I'm going to hold up on that. And we're going to pull into more so what these two stones are. So Simeon and Levi, it says Dinah's brother took each his man's sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. They killed everybody. And you see right down here, you see, and they didn't care what was going on. But that's why I said I want to show you more so what's happening with him, but also with his brother. It says, and he slew Hammer and Shittim. These are kings and the prince, and the sons were at the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shittim's house, and went out, and the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city because they had defiled their sister. So then once they killed everybody, all the other ones went in there and started taking stuff. Then what happened? In verse 28, they took all their sheep, their oxen, their asses, and which was in the city, which was in the field, and all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives, they took captives, and spoiled even all that were in the house. This is what happened once them two did the city in. This is what ended up happening from that. And it says, and Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, have you troubled me to make me stink among the inhabitants of the land of the Canaanites and the Perizzites? And but a few in number would gather themselves together against me and slay me. I should be destroyed in my house, and in my house. And they said, should he deal with our sister as with an hardened? That was his only response. And the reason why I want to make sure we understand this here, I want to also show you this here. I want to show you that there. And this is right here where it's getting into the, that's the topaz stone. That is a topaz stone. And the topaz stone is telling you about what it is. So this is the image of affliction. That's the image of affliction, causing pain and suffering. This is the image of the heart of Simeon to hear. But again, you see this, the same thing, the topaz stone. When you look at the topaz stone as a whole, that should be the heart of Simeon. Right there, right in front of you. And you have Levi, which is we see right here, we're going to go back there. You see Levi is the carbuncle. He's the carbuncle. He's right here. He's the carbuncle. And we want to make sure that we also understand that. And the carbuncle is a unique stone also. That's the carbuncle. You can see the hardness, the image of it. It's hard. You can't see through it. But the carbuncle is called the lightning stone. I'm talking about it's unique. So you have one is the topaz stone, that's the image of affliction and the causing pain. You have one doing one thing, and then this one is the lightning stone. And then also, where you see spiritually, it's talking about I will kindle. So it only takes a little bit to get these boys up, riled up. You even hear Jacob talks about them, saying, yeah, no, you don't want to come into their habitation. Because he's saying that clearly for a reason. He's telling you that for a good reason. Because these two will dish out pain. Actually, I'm gonna show it to you. Then we'll come back to this. But I want to show you that just to make sure we all on the same page here. And you see this here. Let's go over here in Genesis chapter 49. I want to show you these two boys. In Genesis 49, and we're going to look at verse 5. And you'll see this here. It says, Simeon and Levi are brother. Instruments. These are instruments. I told you, it's a trip on what he's saying. Instruments of cruelty. Lightning stone. you see it. In the image of affliction. Causing pain. Instruments. These are straight instruments of cruelty. They will do you in. So he's telling you what goes on, then he tells you more in detail what actually happened with these boys. He tells you more in detail what went on with them. So we'll see that. It says, and you watch it, look what he's saying here. He's telling you right up front. He says, oh, my soul, come not into their secret. You don't want to come into their secret, because it's going to tell you some things here. It says, until their assembly, my honor. You see what he's saying? My honor. His respect. he's telling you his respect. If you get these boys upset, that respect is out the door. They are going to do you in. He says, my honor be not united. He's not united with what they do. And he says, for in their anger, they slew a man. In their self-will, they digged down a wall. And we want to really understand what that is, because what that's telling you is they made that clear. In their anger, people die. He's making this really clear to us. In their anger, people die. And he also tells you, in their self-will, their arrogance. See, self-will ain't talking about nothing but about arrogance, stubbornness. They dig down a wall, meaning they took down the hedge. They took down the hedge, the protection. Same as Satan was telling the Most High. He said, hey, you got a hedge up around Job. But that's what this is saying. They took down his wall. They took down his hedge. And once they took down that hedge, they dig down the wall because of their arrogance. And he tells you this and make sure. Same thing, curse. Curse be their anger. Curse be their anger. Everybody following me there? He's not saying their curse at all. Pay attention to what he's saying. He says, curse be their anger. Not them. Not like you see Noah curse Canaan. He's saying, curse be the anger. For it was fierce. And in their wrath, for it was cruel. I would divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. I want you to pay attention to that one. I want you to really pay attention to that one. So the same thing is, you see this third one, which was the carbuncle. So we want to look at the carbuncle, and as I was showing you, we seen the carbuncle, and you see it there. But as this carbuncle goes, this carbuncle should have clearness also. The carbuncle is there. In its clearness, that's how it should be. In clearness, that's how it should be. But it's not. Our hearts are darkened. But this is how our hearts should, in its clearness, you should be able to see right through it. You can see the beauty of that. And the craziest thing is, it's coming from a stone, but that stone has to go under intense pressure and heat that is in the earth to come to what you see. And you see that. I'm telling you, this is the beautiful thing about what he's talking about, what we need to get a hold of. Let's pick this up and let's go over here to verse 18. Let's look at verse 18. And it says, in the second row shall be an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. An emerald is a glowing type stone. Or you can call it a glowing stone, or they call it a live stone. More so what they're used for is a live stone. But that's the fourth stone. And the fourth stone is telling you more so what it is, but it's the emerald stone. It's telling you right there, it's the emerald stone. So let's look at the emerald stone. It's like that. That's the emerald stone. It's called a glowing stone or better known as the life stone. The fourth child is Judah, praise and to give light, which is this glowing stone. So actually, better yet, let's look at something. I'm going to show you something, what he even said in, when we went here, when we did this in 1 Peter. We seen this here, 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 21. You remember this here, and he's showing us, he's giving us this light. We following him. And that's why he's telling us this here, this glowing stone. It says, "For hereunto ye are called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that we should follow." We following that glowing stone, that live stone, that emerald stone. That's what we're supposed to be following. That stone right there. And when you look at that stone, you can see the difference in this stone and its clearness, because it's a glowing stone. And you see this stone, man, it's a beautiful stone, the emerald stone. You can see how all these stones, they start looking, and all of them sometimes have some of the same color shades, but sometimes the shades are a little bit different, but they always have a clearness to them. They always have this clearness to them. But it's a glowing stone. That's your emerald stone. And then you also have the, we're going to go back and we're going to look at this, and now you have the sapphires. You have a sapphire stone. A sapphire stone is different. The sapphire stone is telling you something completely different. The sapphire stone is telling out, is recounting. It's telling out. It's recounting. But that stone there, that sapphire stone, is Dan. That sapphire stone is Dan. And Dan is actually a judge. That's what that means. Place of the streets, better yet. Place of the streets. And since it's a place of the street, you see he is sat there, and he was a serpent that was in the road. He was a serpent in the road. He's the one who's going to sit there and try to get you to caught up into these doctrines. He's the one that's sitting there. He's the one that's trying to get you to, he want to bite you to get you to fall off your doctrine. In fact, I'll show you something. Show you something here. And we're going to look at that one there also. Because we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that sapphire stone. And we're going to go to Exodus chapter 24. And then we'll go look at that stone. Exodus 24. We're going to pick it up at verse 10. And it tells us this. Remember that? I told you we're going to come back to this. I said, "And we saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was the paved work, a sapphire stone." Dan. He had to get rid of Dan. Dan is now just paved work. That's it. The sapphire stone. That's why we were sitting there having a problem with Dan. Dan is just that simple. And let me show you the sapphire stone, the way we can all get it. So to show you the sapphire stone, the paved work, and this is what you'll see. Even if you look at it today, you'll see people do gravel type roads, and you'll see stuff look just like that. that sapphire stone. You see it look just like that. They're telling out. They doing this. But the main part that you really want to pay attention to, the part you want to pay attention to, this is how Dan should have looked. See, Dan should have looked a certain way. But Dan can get you caught up. Dan can look like this bluish, this purplish blue, this greenish blue, this steel blue. That's Dan. He'll get you caught up. He's gonna get you caught up. He can come at you many different ways. He is that sapphire stone. So you want to pay attention to that. That's what you want to pay attention to. But let's go back over to our chart. And we want to see more so what these things are. Why we should be, see, this is how our heart should be looking. But our hearts are not looking like this. Our hearts looking like the stones. And then we have here the diamond. And everybody know what a diamond is. You know, most people when you get married, you have a diamond, and you know, diamonds and people, you know, they highly wanted things. But that sixth stone is telling you about Naphtali. Remember the order of the sons. We're not looking at the order of Genesis 49. See, Genesis 49, actually, I want to keep that one there. So when you look at Genesis 49, I want to make sure we're paying attention to what's happening here. So in Genesis 49, we're not going in this order. Judah, and then, you know, if it falls in order, it's cool. But Zebulun, you see how Zebulun comes up right after him. We're not going in this order. We're going in the order of the birth. The same way he set a certain order of the stones. So we have to follow the order, not just mix and match. We want to make sure we do our due diligence and follow what we're doing. And Naphtali is the sixth son. Colin, he struggled, he wrestled. That's the one that struggled and wrestled. But we got to remember what the diamond is. The diamond is the one that is the adamant. Did we know that? I want to show you. Yeah, no, it's a shocker though. The diamond is right there. It's right there, right in front of us. That's a diamond. And a diamond is known as adamant. It's a thorn, a flint, a briar. Sit right there, right before you. That's right. We looking right at it. We looking at a diamond. In fact, I'm gonna show you more so something. I want to show you this in Songs of Solomon. I want to show you something. It's really just like I said, he talks very plain, but we just need to know what he's talking about. In Songs of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 2, it says, as the lily, talking about us, among thorns, and you see what's going on, so is my love, his word, among the daughters, among the offspring. You see how clear he is. Now we see he's so clear on his statement here. Because the lily is us. He chose one lily. Actually, I'll show it to you just to make sure we clearly get it. We'll go to 2nd Idris. We'll clearly get it. 2nd Idris chapter 5. And I'm just going there just to make sure we get it. Chapter 5, we're going to go down to verse 23. And it says, it said, O Lord, that bears rule. In the 2nd Idris chapter 5, picking up at verse 23, it says, of all the woods of the earth, and all the trees thereof, thou hast chosen one vine. Watch what happens. And of all the lands, of the whole world, thou hast chosen thee one pit. Here you go right here. And of all the flowers and of all the flowers, there are one lily. One lily. As the lily among the thorns. He's very upfront all the time. And it says, so is my love, his word, among the offspring. Now we see what's going on. Now we see what's happening here. And a lot of us fall among thorns. We the lilies in there, but we fall amongst them. So let's get a better look at the diamond. Let's get a better look at the diamond. And you see the diamond here. Like I was showing you, that's the diamond right there. It's right there before us. But the main thing is the diamond that everybody wants. Because the diamond is that. I'm talking just beautiful. Clear. Just, you can put a good diamond in water and you can't even see it. Because it's clear. That's how he's saying we should be. You should be able to be in that water and cannot even see it for our clearness. This is what our problem is. Yahushua said something that was pretty interesting that I do want to show you. And he said this, and we already spoke about it in Mark chapter 4. As he was telling the parable in Mark chapter 4, picking it up at verse 7. And just like I said, we just going back and we just recapping some of this. It says, and some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew. They grew up and choked it and yield no fruit. That's really interesting on how they say these things. Now we know where he's pulling everything from. It choked the word. Yeah, hopefully we remember this. Hopefully we can remember this. Always remember this from Peter. Peter said this in 2 Peter chapter 3, picking up at verse 15. He said this, and it's highly important on what he's talking about. 2 Peter chapter 3, picking it up at verse 15, it says, in an account in the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, which we know. We found out what we have to go through. Once we had this word, we already know what we up against. And it says, even as our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom to the Spirit given unto him, have written unto you. So Paul, all the stuff that Paul went through, now Paul written unto us, but Paul is writing according to the law, and we got to find out what's happening about that. Watch verse 16, and you'll see this, and it's 100% clear. It says, comparing also in all his epistles, so in all Paul epistles, speaking in them things which are some things hard to be understood. This is Peter, who know Paul, who walked around with Paul. He's telling you in Paul's letters, some of these things is hard to be understood. But we're quick to where we'll sit under people who have no knowledge, no understanding of anything, and all they do is just pump vomit behind vomit, behind vomit, behind vomit, and you'll believe it. And he's saying they're hard to be understood. They which are unlearned and unstable rest. They're going to wrestle as they do other scriptures unto their own destruction. I want you to think about that. The reason why I'm pausing even there, you even have where I did a teaching on Pentecost, and it's caused a big ruckus with a bunch of other, with certain churches. Caused a big ruckus. So then they said, well, we're going to use Matthew, I think it was 16:32 or 32:16. Well, we're going to use this. Say we're talking about a spiritual church. Automatically try to switch because they got to keep the lie. They got to keep the lie going. No matter what. But they're unlearned in scripture. I can care less how big you are. It don't matter how big you are if you're telling the truth or not telling the truth. Yeah, people where you can go to churches where they have 1 million members in one building. You can see places like that. Do it make them right? No. It's just the vomit they pushing out. People that's what they crave. So it's no big deal. But it's saying this clearly here. It says, even with Paul's epistles, because Paul spoke directly law. And if you're unlearned in it, you're not going to understand what Paul's saying. So where Paul might be saying one thing, you're going to think he's talking about something else, and he's not. And you're going to do it to your own destruction. And as some other people, they get a hold to it, and they believe you, and it's going to be to their own destruction. This is pretty clear. This is pretty clear. And then we come to this fourth row. This third row. We got the third row. We got to, because this fell among thorns, and we got to look at the third row. We got to look at verse 19. And we have on the third row the ligure, the agate, and the amethyst. So we have those stones. So we got to deal with the seventh child. Because the first one is the ligure, which is the seventh stone. So we got to deal with the seventh child. But ligure means carnelian. It's a peculiar type stone. It's a peculiar stone. And we'll see this, and you'll see it's talking about Gad. But Gad is talking about fortune. Actually, I'm gonna show you that. Thinking about that actually brings up something. Let's go to Gad real quick. I want to show you something. Deuteronomy 20:28. I want to show you 28:52. Reason why I want to show you something there that's really key here. 28:52. And we want to see this. 28:52. We have this, and it says, and watch, this is Gad. We're going to actually see some stuff going on with Gad. It says, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until the high of the fence walls come down, wherein thou trusted throughout all the land, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Spirit of thy God has given thee. And then what happens? We become carnelians. We just blend in. That's the difference. We becoming like gear stone. That's why I was saying that. In this like gear stone, we just want to blend into the landscape. That's what we're doing. We just blended into the landscape, being Gad. This is the crazy part. But this is Gad, but this is hard. So we can't see our pureness with God. So we believe in false protection. Since we can go through the pressure that I showed you in Deuteronomy, since we couldn't go through that pressure, what we end up doing is holding on to, well, they pound you, and they do all these horrible things through this pressure that we're going through this furnace, because we already said we had to go through the furnace. We know that. Our heaven's going to be as brass, our earth's going to be as iron. We already know this. So we know. So we're going to be pounded for the word of God. So we already know this is going to happen. So why turn into a carnelian and not be peculiar in his clearness? That's what he's getting into all the time. And we have to understand what that is. So the ligure is telling you about what it's doing. It's telling you about what it's doing, because that's a beautiful stone. If you see it, this is it right here. I'm talking. That's it right there. Look at those beautiful stones. Beautiful stones. And all we have to do is take it with our clearness. That's it. Understand, we just don't have error in what we're doing. Actually, I'm going to show you something. I want to show you something. I want to make sure we get this. I want to go to Judith. We're going to use Judith for this one. And I want you to see something in Judith. Judith chapter 5, we're going to look at verse 20. And you're going to see this gentleman. He's talking about what's going on with our people. But he's telling them, hey, if these people are sinning, we can go down there. We can overtake them. But if they go down and they be in their clearness, no, we better keep on stepping. Watch, you're going to see him say it himself. Actually, I'm going to start at verse... I'm going to start at... Let's start at verse 20. We'll start at verse 20. So, Judith chapter 5, verse 20. It says, now, for that reason, my Lord, including governor, if there be any error against this people. So he's telling them right up front, because this is the Israelites up in this mountain that they want to do something to him. But he's saying, no, let's not do nothing to him. I'm going to tell you about him, which he did. And he's saying, now we're going to cruise down there. We ain't going down there trying to start no war. We're going to cruise down there. And he said, we don't find no error in this people. And they sinned against their God. Let us consider if they have any error. Let's consider. And this should be their ruin. And we can go up and we shall overcome them. All we got to do is find a squinkling of air in them. A squinkling of it. We're going to take them. But he's telling you this in verse 21. He says, but, hold up a second, let's not go down there. But if there be no iniquity found in their nation, let my Lord pass by, at least their Lord defend them. And we become a reproach before all the world. We become reproach before all the world. Because we just blending into the Most High. So you mess with us, you messing with him. We just blending in to the Most High. We're not blending in to the world. It's a difference. There's no error in those stones. There's no error found there. These are the differences that we now holding on to. But then we have an eighth stone. We want to look at that stone. The eighth stone is the agate. And we'll see that stone there. You see it right here. The agate stone. And this agate stone is a really interesting, a real interesting stone. This is actually I want to show it to you. This is a happy stone. It's a happy stone, real happy type stone. But it's always, you can run into them actually quite a bit. But that's the agate stone. Sometimes they can develop a hardness around them. They can develop this hardness around, but inside they have these kind of smoothness to them. This is the agate stone. It has like this copper light. How you see them on the outside, they have this copper light thing in there. But then on the inside, they had this smooth. They smooth about what they're doing. And it's telling you his covering is his bread, but he looked for dainty things. It's Asher. See, because Asher is happy, but the agate is the copper-like flower. It's a flower-like. That's what that's saying. Because on the outside it's one way, but then when you look at the over, like you look at a rose and it blooms open, then all of a sudden you see this beautiful like colors and stuff. That's what you see in this. That's what you see in these. It's copper-like, flower-like. And his bread is his covering, and his yield royal dainties. Because Asher wanted to do his own thing. Actually, I'm going to show you Asher. And then we'll see what Asher should be looking like. So let's go over here. We're going to look at this a little bit more. And we want to see what's going on with Asher. So let's go over here. We're going to go to Genesis. We want to find something with Genesis that's really cool with Genesis. And Genesis chapter 10, but we're going to look at verse 11. And now, actually, I want to show you something really up front. We see in verse 21, it says, unto Shem, also the father of the children of Eber, the brother of Japhet, the elder, and were children born, the children of Shem, Elam, and Asher. So we know Asher is one of his child. But it particularly brought him up. It brought up Asher in verse 11 in chapter 10. It brought him up because he didn't stay in the land. And it's telling you, it says, and out of that land went forth Asher to build Nineveh, the city of Rehoboth and Caleb. So we know this is what Asher did. Because Asher, Asher is into his own thing. Asher is happy. He's cool. He's flower-like. He like to bloom everywhere. That's him. That's Asher. And it telling you what he did. He went and built this city because he gonna do his thing. He's doing his thing. And it's telling you in the resin and between Nineveh and Caleb, and the same is a great city. That's what Asher did. Because Asher looked to have his own thing, do his own thing. So when we look back at Asher, we see Asher was a problem because Asher was agate. This is the issue we have with that. That's Asher right there. But now what can we do with that? With Asher? Because Asher should have been clear as day. This is Asher in its fullness. But Asher don't look like this. As none of us is looking like what we supposed to look like. So we have to go through this intense pressure in the earth. We have to go through this intense pressure in the earth to where he can get this. Because this is what he wants. Do you ever okay, we're going to be a peculiar treasure unto him above all people. This is what we know. This is what we know. Do you think the Most High want to put this around his neck? This is what we have to think about. We done seen diamonds. We done seen everything else that he had. Do you think he want to put one of these crazy stones around his neck that look like this? Or one of these crazy stones like this around his neck? Do he want to put one of these stones around his neck? That's all I'm saying. Do he want to put any one of these stones around his neck? This is all I'm saying. And this is what we doing. So how are we going to be a peculiar treasure unto God? And he got rocks. I'm telling you, this is what I want you to think about. And we ain't even got to them all yet. And we're going to put these rocks around it. Okay, God, we're going to put these rocks around your neck. This is the thing that we're doing. Do you really think he's going to put these rocks around his neck? To where you can be a peculiar treasure to him. I'm not going to say what you need to feel. Do you think he's going to put those around his neck? Then we can go outside ourselves and pick up rocks and then make our own treasure. Because that's not what he said. He want this. This is what he's been talking about the entire time. This is what he want to put around and have this peculiar treasure unto him. This is what he wants. But we, for some reason, we unable to do this. For some reason, we unable to do this. But this is what he want to put on. This is what he wants to put on. And we trying to get him to put on put on rocks. Think about it. We trying to get him to put on rocks. And this is our problem. I want you to just think about that. This is the craziness that we're doing. All these stones that I showed so far, this is what we're doing. But then we want to look at another stone. Let's go on and finish this out. We got to look at the amethyst. The amethyst stone. It's telling you that's filling up the third row, and that's right here. That's this stone right here. And the amethyst stone is a peculiar stone. It's a peculiar stone. But that stone is it has a real nice thing to it, and it's called a dream stone. It's the ninth child, which is Issachar. So it's a dream stone. So the amethyst stone is a dream stone. And the ninth child is Issachar, hired worker, one that seeks his wages, hire for reward. This is what we do. So this is what they seek. So since we seek this, well, we got a problem. I'm going to show you this amethyst stone. I want to show you that. I want to show you that stone. Then we can get more into what our presentation is. So as we're looking at this amethyst stone, that's it right there. You know, you see it one way, and you sitting there. Well, yeah. Some people might be saying, I can live with this. I can live with this in a certain way. I might can live with that a certain way, but I don't know. You know, how can you put this around your neck? See, would you really want to put that around your neck? This is the thing. This is right in front of us. Right in front of us. So let's look at something. I want to show you something. Because it's telling you what they are. These are dream stones, and Issachar is hired worker. So we want to look at that in its fullness. We want to understand that in its fullness. So let's look at this. And you'll see this, and this is found. This is actually found. So we're going to go back over to the end panel. We're going to go over here to Micah. We're going to go over here to Micah. And we want to get something out of Micah. We're going to go to Micah chapter 3. In verse 11, we want to find out something key here. In verse 11, it says this. This hired worker. It says, the heads thereof judge for reward. They teach. They judge. They teach for reward. And the priests, the intercessories thereof, teach for hire. That don't even make sense. Okay, you're going to be a mediator between God and man, and you're going to do it for hire? I thought you had to deal with God. I thought you had a covenant with God. And you're going to be intermediary for God and man, and I got to pay you. It says the prophet there divine for money. And then if you want to know something, you gotta pay me for it. You want me to tell you what God said? Break me off a little something, something. Give me a little something, something. And then I can do this. And it says, yet the people who do this, would lean upon the Spirit of God and say, is not the Spirit of God among us? None evil can come upon us. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That is 100% interesting. Because the reason why this is so interesting, because I want to show you something over here in Matthew. I want to show you something in Matthew. In Matthew chapter 16, in verse 26. Verse 26. We want to find this out right here. Right here. It says, what is it? What is a man profit? Providing he shall gain the whole world. We just went through this earlier. And lose his own soul. Or shall a man give in exchange for his soul? You see it over here. You see it over here. This is why, it's really important to really pay attention to what's going on. The reason why I say that is any preacher, I don't care who he is, and this is where people have a problem at. Any preacher that is being paid to teach the word of God, even though most of them are not, but they saying they teaching the word of God, just say they are, and they being paid through salary, through love tokens, through tithes and offering of any sort like that. That's him. And not just him going to hell, but the person who sits there with him goes to hell. That's the point of this. Because your heart is still dark, you just don't know it. So that's why I even say people who hold on to anybody, if you put money in a building of any sort, and the Bible tells you you cannot give out of necessity, and you paying a mortgage, you paying the rent, you paying the light bill, you paying anything on that building, and the one that having you doing that, your heart is darkened, he's going to go to hell, and the person that's sitting with him is going to hell with him. This is clear. But let's get a little bit more. We're going to get to the fourth row. So we got a fourth row of stones. Interesting stones today. And we looking at the fourth row of stones. We got the beryl and the onyx and the jasper. They shall be set in gold in their enclosings. So in closing, we got this fourth set, and we need to know what these are. These last three children. Real, highly interesting in what we got to do here with these last three children. So we have one which is the beryl. The beryl stone is called a firestone. That's interesting, isn't it? It's a firestone. The beryl is a firestone. And the 10th child is Zebulun. And his border will be Zidon. It's really weird. That's really, really weird. Because Zebulun in his border is going to be Zidon. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. We're going to go back to Genesis 49. We're going to go here, and we're going to go to Zebulun real quick. Okay. It tells us right here in 49 verse 13. The reason why, and just like I said, we want to make sure everybody get what's going on. And it's telling us about Zebulun. He's the 10th child. Okay. Now Zebulun is telling you about something else. But it's telling you about his borders. And the beryl is talking about firestone. But his borders, actually, watch this. He shall be for a haven of ships. This is crazy within itself, but it's right here in front of us, and we can't get around it. And it's going to be, and his borders shall be in Zidon. So we want to understand what all that, we want to know what Israel is talking about. In Zidon, this right here, this word right here, I want you to understand what this word is and why this Bible is laid out that way this is. So Zebulun is talking about he's this fiery stone, but his borders is going to be Zidon. Zidon is telling you it's a fishery. Literally, that's what it means. A fishery. Plenty of fish is what this is saying. It's a fishery of plenty of fish, a place of honey. It's right in front of us. And then it tells us even more. So the desires is to wish in his habitation to dwell. And he want to dwell there. He going to be dwelling there. He shall dwell in the haven of the sea. This is where he's going to hang out at. It's telling you right here. Remember how the mom said, the proof is in the pudding. It's already in front of us. This is the crazy part about this. But it's right in front of us. We can't get around it. And the crazy is this. And it's telling you he's going to dwell, and it's going to be a haven of ships, meaning the border. It means there's going to be the shore people in the border of these ships. You see right there, it's ships, plural. People saying that, well, I don't get what you're saying. Okay, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to Psalms. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to prove the point on why this is so important. And why it's so important to understand Paleo Hebrew words and what they're actually saying, because they reveal everything. They just tell you everything. But then the most important thing is you understand Scripture, and then you can read it better. But in Psalms 104, verse 26, watch what it says. This talking about these ships. We want to see these ships, and this is why it's saying there. Now he's going to hang here. Zebulun going to hang out there, and it says, and there go those ships. Those haven of ships. And it says, there is that Leviathan. Where them ships are, Leviathan is there, whom thou hast made to play therein. And it's plenty of fish. Think about it. I'm telling you, it's crazy. It's crazy, but let's look more at let's go into this. Let's look at this barrel. We want to look at this rock, and get an understanding of the rock. We want to get an understanding of the rock, and we just want to look at it, and that's a barrel rock. But the problem is, we hang it out in these habitations. And he wants somewhere to hang out at. So this is why you have so many of us. We like to sit there, and you want to, oh no, we can't forsake the assembling of ourselves. We got to go in this church. We got to go. That's why we do this. And it just gobs of us. We just, oh yeah, we can't forsake assembling. It says, no, don't assemble unto condemnation. And that's what you're doing. But we're not seeing it. We sitting there thinking it's something else, and we going there and just plenty of in Zidon, a fishery where plenty of fish is, and we're there. We're there, and we look like this. It's nothing we can do, and more so, that's how we should be looking. That's a barrel. Look at the beautiful colors of it. Barrel can come in so many different types of colors like this. But we can't be in that clearness. We have to be this rock where it's plenty like this. You think he's gonna do you really think Christ is gonna put that around his neck? You're gonna answer your own question. You think Christ really gonna put that around his neck? And we should be looking like that. So where he can shape it and make it a really beautiful thing. And I'm gonna tell you the craziest thing is on this next stone. This next stone is an interesting stone. I'm gonna tell you why. We had this past week, this person did something really, really stupid. I'm not going to really get into it, but I want to tell you about a thing with my father, and he really interesting on what he was doing. But the 11th stone is talking about Joseph, and that's why I'm saying it's really interesting, because my dad, he had a ring on. And it was an onyx stone. It was an onyx stone in there, which is telling you right there. It tells you right there. So it's really weird. It's really weird that he had that. Once you look at this right here, onyx stone. But then we even had somebody stupidly thinking that my dad, his name was Will Reed. My biological father was Melvin Johnson. But they were so stupid they thought the other way around. Just the ignorance of people's stupidity. But anyway, my dad, he cracked me up because he had this ring on. It was an onyx stone. It was an onyx stone in there. This onyx stone here. And ever since I can remember, he always had this ring on. If he didn't have it when I was a kid, I wouldn't actually know, because every time I seen him, he always had it on. He always had this onyx. It was like a silver. It was like a silver ring, but it had an onyx stone in it. Really interesting. But we have to know what that setting is, and this is why it's so interesting. Is that the onyx stone is a setting them equal. That's what it actually means. It's justifying them. That's why I say it's really interesting on him and the onyx stone. And I asked him about it one time. I was probably a teenager. I asked him about it, and he didn't elaborate much on it, because I thought somebody gave it to him, because he kept the ring on. I told him one time when I got older, you don't have to cut that ring off, because I never seen him take it off. But he might have took it off. I didn't know. But it means equal and justifying though, which is talking about Joseph, the son of exhortation. Meaning he's the son of prophecy, the son of consolation, to where he can give God's increase. The onyx stone. Really, really interesting stone. Really highly interesting stone. And that's what, excuse me, that's why I was speaking about that, why it's so unique. And if you see that onyx stone, the one that you see on the right part of the hand, the stone that he had was kind of like that, but it was shaped, and it had a shape to it, and on his finger. So it was really interesting. But we want to still understand that this is justifying and equal about the stone. That's why I said it's really, really interesting. Because when you sit there and you look at this stone and you see it with him, and he was a different cat, a whole different cat. He did crazy things. He would crack up because his fear of dogs was. I'm talking about, he didn't fear no dog. No, he didn't. Actually, I don't know anything that he was scared of. I can never tell you what he was scared of, because he never showed it. If he was, never seen it. But this onyx stone, he kept, and I always seen him with it. I always seen it on him, even until the day he left here. But that onyx stone is unique, and I'm gonna show you why. And it's tied to Joseph, and it's just tied to Joseph, which really makes it really kind of close and make you understand things a little bit better. So I want to take you over here to Genesis chapter 48. And I want to show you the double portion actually went to Joseph. So we're going to see this in Genesis chapter 48, but we're going to look at verse 22. I want to show you something about Joseph, because this is really interesting. And he's talking to Joseph. He says, moreover, in Genesis 48 and 22, he says, moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brother. Now, remember, people will tell you all the time how I'm the firstborn child, I'm the first. No, he ain't talking about it. He can care less about your flesh. Who's the firstborn coming to the understanding and belief of God? So when people say, no, I'm the firstborn child, he can care less about that. But he's telling you right here, Joseph was the 11th child. We're going to see more so in this. But he's telling right there, I've given you one portion above your brother, which I took by the hand out of the Amorites and the sword and with my bow. So he's telling you right here. Now, what he did on top of that, Joseph already was going to receive that. He was going to receive that, but what he was talking about, what we're going to see in Genesis chapter 48, verse 3. And watch what he did here. Really interesting. That's why I say he's really interesting in what he did here. We're going to look at verse 3. And he said this here. And Jacob, who it is, said unto Joseph, his son, he said, God Almighty appeared unto me in Luz, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and gave me wisdom. But I want you to see what he's actually saying here. In verse 4. It said, and he said unto me, remember, I will make thee fruitful and multiply thee, and will make thee a multitude of people, and I will give this land unto thy seed after thee in an everlasting possession. But why is this really what it's getting to? Because he's going to tell you right here in verse 5. He's going to clear up this altogether. But I want you to see this clearly Jacob saying this. And I want you to see what's happening here. How Joseph actually got this double portion. And he says, and now thy two sons. So Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which was born unto thee in the land of Egypt before I came unto thee into Egypt. He said, before I did that, and you had these two boys, now they are mine. So Jacob is sitting there saying, no, they're not yours. Those now belong to Israel. That's what he's telling him. The same, he said, as comparing Reuben and Simeon. They shall be mine. He's telling you right, those are mine. Those are not yours. That's unreal. That don't make common sense. You got the 11th child who got the double portion. In fact, we'll look at this in 45. You'll see even what he told his brothers. We'll see this in 45. Genesis chapter 45. We'll look at verse 4. And you'll see what he told his brothers. Because his brothers did some things, wasn't right to him. But watch what Joseph tells them. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. So he let them know, you guys the ones sold me here. But let's see, do he put it on his brothers? Let's see, do he put it on them? Watch how unique this man is. Watch how unique Joseph is. This onyx stone, this justifier, this man. He says, now for that reason, be not grieved. Don't be grieved. Don't trip. He says, nor angry with yourself. Don't even be angry with yourself that ye sold me hither, that you even sold me there. This is Joseph. It says, for God did send me before you there to preserve life. That's this man. See, when people sit there and they try to sit there and play they this and they that, no. Joseph had 11 brothers, a father and a mother. And he was sent there by himself. An onyx stone. An onyx stone. You think about that. See, don't sit there and play games when you're dealing with something like this. The Bible says this. I'm going to show you something. We're going to go through this and see something. In 2nd Esdras says this. It's clear as day. It is clear as day. In 2nd Esdras chapter 7. And we're going to see this in verse 6. We're going to see this in verse 6. What Joseph just talked about. It says, there's also another thing. A city is built and set upon a broad field and full of all good things. I want this to sink in, because he's going to tell you something right now. Watch what happens here. Verse 7. The entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in dangerous place to fall, like as if there was fire on the right hand, and on the left deep water. Why are we checking this? Why are we checking this? Do you think the firstborn would have did this? Do you think the firstborn would have accomplished that? Let me jog your memory. I'm going to jog your memory. See, we need to understand exactly what's going on all the time. In Genesis chapter 39, verse 9, we went through it earlier because I said we need these keys to where we can clearly get all what's going on. And it's telling you this right now. Joseph said this when Reuben, I want to show you something. And Reuben, let me see, do we need that? No, we need that one there. Well, we're just going to bounce with this one. We'll bounce with this one. It says, there is none greater in this house than I. This is Joseph. Actually, we'll show you that it's Joseph. And it said, and it came to pass in verse 7, it came to pass after these things that the master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Now, we know Reuben, the firstborn, he laid with Bela. Did he not? So do you think if Reuben was in Egypt at this time, do you think he would have laid with her and she sitting there, she cast her eyes upon him and said, lay with me? Do you think she would have laid with him? Or do you think he would have laid with her? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he would have. But it's telling you, it says, and he said, but he refused and said unto his master's wife, remember, my master's wrought not what is with me in the house. And he have committed all that he hath in my hand. So everything that he had is in his 100% power. And he's telling you, he says, and there is none greater in this house than I. She's standing right there. He's telling her, you ain't even greater than me. And you in the house. And none greater than me. When he ain't in here, I'm the biggest, baddest man walking around here. But he says more. Neither have I kept back anything from me. But you, because thou art thy wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Reuben did it. Reuben did it. You're going to enter in this place by yourself. And it's telling you right there. So he's telling you right in verse 8. In the Dross, chapter 7, 2nd Dross, chapter 7, verse 8, it says, now only one path between them both, and between the fire and water, so small, there could be but one man go through at once. So only Joseph was able to go to preserve life. It was Joseph. He the one did these things. And then the first thing people sit there and do is try to look at it a whole different way. So when you see this in Genesis chapter 49, picking it up at verse 10, it makes it even more perfectly clear for you about what happens. In Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, it says this. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. So it's not going to depart from Judah because we had to follow Yahushua, and that's the way we got to go. It says, nor a lawgiver, which was Joseph. From between his defeat, from between his desires, from between his feet. And it says, until Shiloh comes, into who right it is. Until right it is shall come. And he should gather his people. And actually, let me make sure we're clear on this. I want to make sure we're clear on this because people teach that wrong too. People teach that one wrong also. So I just want to make sure you know who right it is, to Shiloh, because that's all Shiloh means. But people will tell you all kinds of super stupid and silly things, and it's the craziest thing in the world. In Ezekiel chapter 21, and we're going to pick it up at verse 27. We're going to look at this in verse 27. And you'll see it right here. He says, I, who the Spirit of God, I will overturn, he will turn your butt over. Overturn, he will turn your grandmama butt over. I will turn your mama over. And it shall be no more until he whose right it is, and I will give it him. So he don't care who you are. He'll overturn your butt, overturn your mama butt, overturn your daddy butt until he gets the one he wants. Until he gets what he wants. He ain't playing with us. He gonna keep digging in those rocks. He gonna keep pushing those rocks. Let me show you this. I don't think we correlated this together, but I'm gonna make sure we get it. I'm gonna make sure we get this one. So as we just sit there and we just seen, we sitting there and we looking at it right in our face. He gonna keep pushing these rocks around and keep pushing these rocks around. That's an onyx stone right there. It's a beautiful stone. And he's telling you right up front, I'm going to overturn. I'm going to overturn. I'm going to keep turning these rocks over. I'm going to keep turning these rocks over until I get the rocks I want. And these are them. Until I get my rocks I want. Until I get these rocks. I'm going to overturn, overturn, and overturn. Until who right it is, I'm going to give it to him. Until who right it is, I'm going to give it to him. I ain't trying to, you think he's trying to put that on his neck? You think he really trying to put that on his neck? So we coming to the last stone. We coming to the last stone. And the last stone is a jasper. Now we got a jasper stone. Jasper stone is glittery. It's real glittery. You know, it's how people tell you about, well, if you come out to California, even at night, you got to put glasses on. They tell you that. I used to hear it all the time. But you got to wear glasses, shades at night. But Benjamin is the son of the right hand, meaning righteous power. But no, don't let that catch you up. Don't let that catch you up, because he's telling you something that what he's about. And I'm gonna show you what he's about. Because we got to remember who he is and what he's all about. And we're going to go down there, we're going to look at him, because he ain't what he's saying he is. So we want to sit down, we want to find out exactly who he is. And it's telling us right here about Benjamin. Benjamin shall be a raven as a wolf. But his stone says righteous power. Told you, don't let it trip you up. Don't let it trip you up. I just want to show you this stone. These look like rocks you can get hit with. These rocks kind of sharp. They look like they'll put some damage on you. Those are jasper stones. Look like they'll put a hurting on you. So we want to understand what all that is. We want to understand what that is. But let's go through and find out scripturally what's going on here. And we're gonna look at Genesis. We're gonna look at John chapter 10. I want to show you something in John chapter 10. John 10 in verse 11. I want to show you something in John 10 in verse 11. And he's telling you this. It says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. I don't know what part we don't get. I don't know what part we don't understand. For some reason, that don't sink in our head. You got men that go around and say they the good shepherd or they the shepherd, and we'll sit right there and hold everything that man said. And call him our shepherd. And won't think twice. So we look at that and we get the understanding from there. But when you sit there in verse 12, it says this. we just read on them. It says, but he that is a harlot is not the shepherd. No. He's for hire. You pay him. You give him money. He'll divine for money. He'll do all these things for money. But he'll sit there and say he's your shepherd. He's a wolf. Actually, he'll tell you this right here. He's not a shepherd who of his own sheep are not seeth the wolf coming and leaveth the sheep and flee. And the wolf catches them and scatter the sheep. That's the wolf. That is the wolf. In fact, in verse 13, he says, the harlot fleeth because he is a harlot and careth not for the sheep. That's all he always been. Just like we said, any preacher getting paid, calling himself he's a preacher of God, he getting paid in any shape or form, teaching the word. You already know what he is. But I guarantee you, people going to still sit there and say, how they going to live? Who told him to quit his job? He seen it was more lucrative to get your money. He seen it more lucrative. He can sit on his butt while you go to work. So we have to remember what we into. We have to remember what's happening here. What we got to look at. And the reason why is because we have something that's going on in why we're in this world. Why we are in this world today. Because as it said, we in this world today, but a lot of things that's happening to us today is actually going to change us forever. Because as it says, we are in this world. But as we in this world, we're going to find out that there's a whole different ball game that's going on. And that's why it's so important to which we know exactly what's going on today. Meaning this, I want to show you a piece of text to where we can know this as we getting ready to go out. I want you to look at something in Genesis. And pay close attention to this. Pay very, very close attention to this. In Genesis chapter 25, and we'll look at that in verse 22. And it says this. And this is the struggle of life. So we're going to look at verse 21, but we're going to focus on verse 22. It says, and Isaac entreated the Spirit of God for his wife, because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him. Rebekah, his wife, conceived. So she conceived two things. We're going to see it here. Please make sure you understand this from here out. And you see this in verse 22. It says, and the children struggled together within her. You see, there's a full thought there. That's a full thought there. But the problem we have here is what we need to understand. What we need to understand. This is your parable. Because you are an actual living parable today. And we are in a womb. See, most people think that you're born of flesh and you're it. That's not it. That's not the truth. You're in the womb of the earth. Today. Right now. And we're currently fighting as we're struggling and fighting back and forth with the ways of Esau. Some of us is Esau fighting the ways of Jacob. They in the womb and they're going to struggle together. Is what it's telling you. That's why it's saying it's their way. It's telling you right clearly. It's saying in the children struggle together within her. I want you to pay attention to what's happening here, because the children is talking about the works. In the works, actually, let me unhighlight. Let me unhighlight and highlight. I'm gonna unhighlight and highlight. And now let me highlight. So what's happening here in the children is works. That's what that is. So these works struggle. They're fighting. I want you to pay attention to that because that's important. And is struggling with the works of good and evil, which is one is the truth and the one is the knowledge of good and evil. They're struggling within her. And he says more here. And she want to know why is that thus, and she inquired into the Spirit of God. But he tells her, again, two nations. This is where everybody messes up. But I'm going to share spiritual stuff with you that I don't normally share. But those two nations is two powers. Two powers within the womb of the matrix. You got one power of good and evil. You got one power of the truth. He never spoke nothing about concerning flesh when he's dealing with the struggle. Ever. The flesh is not to succeed the power of the Spirit. So anything that's concerning flesh has nothing good that will ever come from it, because he's never concerned what's the good of flesh. Ever. So these two nations, and when you see nations in the Bible, all it's talking about is powers. Talking about these powers in the womb of the matrix. But he says more here. They are in thy womb two manner of people. He's clarifying these nations. Clarifying it. So those people are spirits. That's all he ever meant. It's just like I said, he's not concerning about the flesh. So he's telling you it's two powers are in thy womb, in two manner of spirits shall be separated from thy bowels. And all he's saying is separate from their belly. That's all he's saying. And we'll see this where you'll see more so. I'm going to show you this one here, just so we can get it. Let's look at 2nd Esdras 6 and 9. 2nd Esdras 6 and 9. And we'll find this here. That's why he's been saying this the entire time. For Esau, it's the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning that followeth. This is why you've been saying this the entire time. These two is contrary to one another. They cannot subside in the same place forever. They got to separate from the bowels. So what do we have? When we go back over here to Exodus, and you see right here, it tells you 4 squares shall be doubled at the span of the length thereof, and the span should be at the breadth thereof. So we understand this now. And you understand that you have a childhood and you have an adulthood. two manners of life that you see. One man. But the manner of a child and the manner of a man, these two is contrary to one another. The older one will serve the younger one. As a child get older, he will serve the younger. The experience of life is what you need to make sure you learn and you hold on to. We are in the womb of the world, and currently these seeds are the stones and the special characters on what we need to make sure we're doing. A lot of us will, and a lot of us won't. A lot of us is just black. We are just black. So hopefully you guys got some understanding from there as you go through it. And then if you need to, please go back and look at it. I'll probably be putting some chapter markers in here to where you can understand it more so. So what we're going to do, we're going to open up the class area real quick for a minute to go over some Bible study stuff that I will be coming up on, and then we'll go out from there. So you're more than welcome to join in the back. You see the link, it says the Black Summary. You can see that down in the description. You're more than welcome, and hopefully that you guys got some understanding from this. And with that, I say to each and every person, until then, and I know we will be doing the Bible study on tomorrow, but until then, I say to each and every person, hopefully you understood black and what we need to look like. Because what you see in this screen right now is how we should look. But right now, we are black. So with that, I say to each and every person, enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. And until then, I say to each and every person, shalom.